This is my cousin Catherine. She's been with me for every single New York City launch, every single one, and so it just doesn't seem right. It didn't seem right that she not be here for this, my 8th literary novel. She's my first cousin. We are 1 year, 1 day, and 1 month apart. So this is her background. Kathleen D. Taylor is a proud native of Brooklyn like myself, who holds 3 national certifications in American Sign Language, interpreting, and transliteration. Kathleen studied theatrical interpreting at Juilliard and has interpreted over a dozen on and off Broadway performances, music concerts, community festivals, music videos, and book readings. I am extremely proud and honored to have her at my side once again. Thank you. So, gathering of waters. First of all, I want to say that when we, meaning Akashik and I, sat down and decided where and when we would launch Gathering of Waters here in New York City, we threw out a couple of suggestions, and they came back with the Center for Fiction, which I was very excited about. The Center for Fiction came to me and gave me a number of dates. The 2nd, some other dates in February, and the 9th. And the reason why I chose this day, the reason why I chose this day is because the 9th of February has always been very important to me. First, one of my very best friends is born on February 9th. Second, the first book I ever read by a Black woman was Alice Walker, Color Purple. She's born on February 9th. Thirdly, my daughter, her birthday is today. She's 24 years old. And lastly, when I was sending out my query letters back, between 1989 and 1999, trying to get Sugar picked up, which is my first novel, it was on February 9th that I sent a query letter to James Vines, who would become my agent. And so it's just been always a magical day for me. So I figured February 9th was available, and here I am. Now, Gathering of Waters. So this novel has been in the works in my head for a number of years. Emmett Till, everybody's familiar with Emmett Till. I was very surprised when I started speaking with friends that I went to school with, meaning high school. And I went to an all-white, all-girls Catholic high school. When I bring up Emmett Till, they didn't know anything about him. And so I figured, you should know about Emmett Till the way you know about George Washington. It's just somebody you should know about. I never thought that I would write a story that he would be included in, never in a million years. But it was something that was nagging at me for quite some time. And Glorious was already out on the shelves, and this is the book that I published in 2010. And I was a couple of chapters into Gathering of Waters, and I really wasn't clear on the voice at that time. I didn't know who was really telling the story. And sometimes, especially for me, I don't know about any other writers, when I sit down and I'm having issues, I have to actually physically voice the question. Who's telling the story? All my other stories, it's either, with The Warmest December, it was told in first person, so I was clear that Kenzie was telling the story. My previous novels, it may be an unknown narrator, but to me it feels like a female. But this was weird. I couldn't tell if it was male, I couldn't tell if it was a female. And so I asked the question, I went to bed and I woke up, and the next day I was told it's the town. The town of Money, Mississippi is telling the story. So, personification. That's exactly what happened here. And I don't have any real formal training with writing, so I always have to go back and look up these things. So I gave the town a voice, and I think the voice is interesting and unique, and it's full of strength and passion. And what I'll do is I'll read a little bit from Gathering of Waters, and I hope you have questions for me about this book or any of my other titles. I'm not going to read too much though. Chapter 1. I am Money, Money, Mississippi. I have had many selves and have been many things. My beginning was not a conception, but the result of a growing, stretching, and expanding which took place over thousands of years. I have been figments of imaginations, shadows and sudden movements seen out of the corner of your eye. I have been dewdrops, falling stars, silence, flowers, and snails. For a time I lived as a beating heart. Another life found me swimming upstream toward a home nestled in my memory. Once I was a language that died. I have been sunlight, snowdrifts, and sweet baby's breath. But today, however, for you and for this story, I am Money, Money, Mississippi. I don't know for whom or what I was named. Perhaps I was christened for a farmer's beloved mule or a child's favorite pet. I suspect, though, that my name was derived from a dream deferred, because as a town, I have been impoverished for most of my existence. You know, before white men came with their smiles, Bibles, guns, and disease, this place that I am was inhabited by the native men, Choctaw Indians. It was the Choctaw who gave the state its name, Mississippi, which means gathering, many gatherings of waters. The white men fancied the name, but not the Indians, and so slaughtered them and replaced them with Africans, who, as you know, were turned into slaves to drive the white man's ego, whim, and industry. But what you may not know, and what the colonists, genociders, and slave owners certainly did not know, is this. Both the native man and the African believed in animism, which is the idea that souls inhabit all objects, living things, and even phenomena. When objects are destroyed and bodies perish, the souls flit off in search of a new home. Some souls bring along memories, baggage if you will, that they are unwilling or unable to relieve themselves of. Oftentimes, these memories manifest in humans as deja vu. Other times, and in many other life forms and so-called inanimate objects, these displays have been labeled as curious, bizarre, absurd, and deadly. You may have read in the news about the feline having all of the characteristics of a dog, the primate who walked upright from the day he was born until the day he died, of men trapped in female hosts and vice versa, the woman who woke one morning to find that she had grown a tail, the baby boy who emerged from his mother's womb flanked not in skin but scales, the man who grew to the towering heights of a tree, rivers overflowing their banks, monster waves wiping away whole cities, twisters gobbling up entire neighborhoods, relentlessly falling snow blanketing towns like volcano ash. These are all memories of previous existences. Listen, if you choose to believe nothing else that transpires here, believe this. Your body does not have a soul. Your soul has a body, and souls never ever die. To my memory, I have never been human, which probably explains my fascination with your kind. Admittedly, I am guilty of a very long and desperate infatuation with a family that I followed for decades. In hindsight, I believe that I was drawn to the beautifully tragic heartbrokenness of their lives, and so for years remained with them, helplessly tethered like a mare to a post. Their story begins not with the tragedy of 55, but long before that, with the arrival of the first problem, which came draped in crinoline and silk, carrying a pink parasol in one hand and a Bible in the other. So that's the introduction to Doll, who was the first problem. Now, there's a spirit in this book who constantly reinvents herself for the entire novel. And we first meet her in Doll, who is the wife of a preacher. I want to introduce you to Esther, who is this spirit who constantly reinvents herself and finds herself in doll at the opening of the novel. Esther the whore had been a fixture in Tulsa and could be spotted day in and day out, wrapped around light poles, beckoning men with a wiggle of her finger, hissing like a snake. Psst. Come here, I got something that'll make it all better. She had been a beauty once, bright-skinned and thick-legged, with a curtain of hair that stretched all the way down her waist. Esther. Too pretty for any woman to want as a friend. So beautiful, men didn't think about loving her. They only fantasized about melting away between her creamy thighs. Poor Esther. The men she welcomed into her heart and into her bed should have worshipped the ground she walked on, and they did for a while. But eventually, her beauty felt like a hot spotlight, and their confidence faded away beneath the luminous beam. They questioned her loyalty and themselves. Why she want me? The answers always fell short of what they needed, which was a scaffold of assuredness sturdy enough to bear their egos. Esther replied, I love you. Ain't that enough? They said it was, but it wasn't, and they didn't know why. So the men beat her for loving them. They beat the goodness and the sweetness out of her. They beat her into the streets, into back alleys, down into the dirt, into the gutter, onto her knees, onto her back, and then they climbed on top and emptied their miseries inside of her. Esther.